Good evening, everyone, and welcome along to your Monday night edition of the TII podcast. My name is Craig Dennett, and I'm your host this evening as we start to look ahead to Rangers' big second leg crunch tie against Servette away in Geneva, which takes place on Tuesday night this week. To look ahead to the game and to discuss all the news from today, including press conferences from Michael Beale, from Ryan Jack. I did try and find the Servette manager press conference, but it was not appearing anywhere, so it might be a bit later tonight for that one. But joining me to discuss it all, first up we have Reiss. How are you doing, Reiss?
Yeah, good, thanks, Craig. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you, mate. And we've also got Kendal joining us as well. How are you doing, Kendal?
Yeah, brilliant, great to be here.
Excellent. Well, we'll get stuck in. I know the guys covered the Rangers versus Livingston game in detail last night. Obviously a 4-0 win, so not much to complain about on that front. Some great goals in there as well. I think I've watched Kieran Dowell's goal over and over and over again. I actually watched Cifuentes' goal a few times, even though it was disallowed, which is a wee bit strange. But Reiss, just before we get stuck into looking ahead to the Servette game, can you give us your sort of final thoughts on the weekend's game and what we can take from it going forward? We know the team are just everyone's already hating the word. The team are just gelling together, but the team are just starting to get to know each other, and it seems game by game we're seeing progress.
Yeah, I thought first half we were poor. Don't get me wrong, the first kind of 10 minutes or so was okay. Then the rest of the first half you're going, oh, this is a tough watch. But a few chances created. I think you can tell that the players don't really have that familiarity yet. There's a few misplaced passes or runs going elsewhere that you wouldn't see with a team that had been playing together for years. So it's pretty evident. But it was good to get quite a convincing win, because I think even for more so than ourselves as fans, the media narrative and that, if we'd have scraped by Livingston with a 1-0 win or something, it would have been, Rangers are miles off it. But just even that 4-0 win puts out scares into quite a lot of fans. And I thought the midfield were excellent, 2 centre halves excellent, keeper excellent, 2 full backs had a woeful game. Wasn't impressed with Dessers or Lammers, and then I thought Danilo was much better playing up front in his own second half.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair assessment. I'd probably question a few individual player assessments there, but I think overall, in terms of started well, went into a bit of a lull, and then pushed on towards the end. Kendal, I think it seems to be a bit of a pattern we've seen in recent weeks in terms of a really fast start, first 10, 15, 20 minutes, come flying out the blocks, try and get an early goal in the game, which we did at the weekend again. We did it last week against Servette as we start to get to the second leg, and then we seem to hit that bit of a dip. I don't know why. I don't know if the players subconsciously take their foot off the gas and think they need to now conserve energy to have a second goal or have a goal in the second half as such. But it's an interesting thing, and it's something that I guess would like to see less of, and I'd like to see more of a consistent level of play. Do you think that's a pattern that's done on purpose, or do you reckon it's a fitness thing?
I'm not convinced it's either of those. I mean, I certainly don't think it's on purpose. It seems to be something will happen in the game. You get Cifuentes' goal disallowed, and then we seem to go into a shell. It's as if you're kind of expecting a reaction, something to happen at the back, and all of a sudden it goes back. I don't think it helps having Cantwell in that middle three. I think he's our best player by a country mile, but having him in that section rather than the front section, I think takes away a little bit of the drive. When he's pushing forward, the team push forward for me, and then when he settles back into midfield and a little bit more solidity, etc., that's where the kind of drive goes. Because I think the front three are all very much trying to still find their feet. And that's kind of when you notice the real injection of pace that Seaman Matondo came. And you know that, they've obviously done a good shift, because when Matondo looks like a player coming on, then the opposition's tired, is what I'd suggest. So you kind of know that midfield has done a good shift. So I as I say, I think it's a shape thing for me. You've got three guys up the front who's finding their own way. When Danilo was the lone striker up front, I think it was quite telling that then we looked more of a threat. And I'll be interested to see if that goes. One thing I would say about the weekend is there's a couple of players just now starting to pencil their names in that first 11, which we've not really had. So there's a couple of guys that are really still in doubt, or positions that are really in doubt. But at this moment in time, you're starting to say it's just fill in the names in that first 11 sheet.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I probably disagree with you about the Cantwell side of things. I think the way we started that first leg against Servette last week, with Cantwell really being the driving force after that dismal display at Rugby Park, Cantwell was a driving force behind that all. But I do get what you mean in terms of if he sits back to start to conserve energy, then there's no one else from that midfield driving us forward. But I do like Sam Lammers in that position. I do like Dessers and Danilo in there. I think Dessers is the one that's jury's out on that at the moment, but he admitted in the post-match press conference when we were sitting in it after the game last week, he admitted that he felt fit enough for the first 70 minutes and then he just completely fell off a cliff effectively. So he's clearly still getting back to fitness after I think he was injured for a while before he even joined us. So I guess he's probably trying to manage our expectations as much as his own expectations, and whether he's managing that successfully or not, I'm not too sure. Paul McGarrigle says, Craig, is it a dip or is the other team trying more? I don't think teams necessarily are trying more or less against us after the first 20 minutes. I think it's something we're doing more than what the other team are doing. They may get more used to us. They may slightly adjust to how we are set up or where we are applying the pressure, but I don't think the other team is trying any more or less. And Reiss is clearly multitasking, so let's go for a bit of inception. It says we need Cantwell where Lammers was, in my opinion. Trips, what do you all think of Lammers and Dessers so far? So Reiss, give us your opinion of Lammers and Dessers so far then.
I think both have looked really slow. I actually think there is probably merit in what Paul was saying there. Sorry, it was Paul that had said about the other teams trying. Yep.
Yeah.
I think that when teams come to play the Old Firm, like you're playing a cup final, you're more likely to try every minute of that game. Whereas like our players, a lot of them might not either get the expectation or realise how much these teams try yet. You've heard like people saying it's everybody else's cup final. So it's maybe easy for our players to get up for that first 10 minutes. You know, you've come out to the atmosphere, it's belting the first 10 minutes, and then it does just sort of die down towards the end of the half. So I think that's maybe just where the dip's coming from. But I think I'd probably agree with Kendal. I think Cantwell's got to be one further forward. I don't think that he's bad in the midfield at all. He was just very, very good at the weekend, but I think he's better leading that press to the front. And I thought we were much better second half with two wingers behind one central striker than we were with one behind two. But time will tell, and I think we'll change it for opposition. But I think Lammers and Dessers look really slow. I know fitness has been quite big, but I just think, like, I'm not saying what either brings. I don't know what either of you think about that one.
When it comes to Sam Lammers, I'm actually a bit surprised. There's Ofra Hills also in the comments, and he says Lammers needs matches. Jury's still out for me. I'm a bit surprised by that. I think Sam Lammers has been really positive since he came in. I think he's more than matched his goal tally for what seems like the rest of his career so far in this first few games for Rangers. And he's one of these players who is more technical, who does pick up positions rather than trying to just run at pace past players. And I think at times that's what we need. He's pretty much like Yanis Hadji, but fitter, almost is what I'd say from that aspect. Kendal, you want to jump in?
Yeah, it's just the thing I noticed with Lammers and where I'm going with him, I think he's going to be a cracking player for Rangers. I do think he will be. At the minute, he's a yard shorter pace. He's got all the skill in the world. If you put that chance that he got at the weekend in front of everybody else, maybe one or two will score. Cantwell might score it. Cifuentes might score it because, you know, like I'm going to get a tattoo to him in a way. He's just brilliant. But I think a lot of other people miss. But what I see from, you know, you're talking about the slowdown. If you watch the press after about 30, 40 minutes, Lammers are standing there. He's not leading the press. And that's, yes, that'll come with time, etc. But I'm not sure he's that guy. I think he's almost a luxury player. Now, there's times and places for that. For instance, against the other half of the Old Firm, who I won't name, I think he's going to be really, really effective because he's going to see the pass. He's going to take on that last man when he's getting one-on-one, etc. He's going to be hugely effective. But he's not the man to lead that press. And that's where I think he can play there with Cantwell, and him supporting Danilo would be a very, very interesting three for me. But likewise, and we'll come on to the things as well, I say if you have him in the team and a Seamer or somebody who's going to actually just attack that press, then I think that's where you see some of that dip you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and to be fair, I don't think, obviously we've seen Dessers as the final part of the front three in recent games. I'm not entirely convinced that's going to continue, although I do think the two up front are starting to create a wee bit of a partnership, and they're starting to understand each other's game a little bit better, and they do offer us something different in terms of style. But I do think that Dessers will be the one that drops out when we do have to press teams high, and like you say, whether it's Sima one side and Lammers the other, or Lammers and Cantwell, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think when we've got to break down teams, we will continue to see Cantwell in that, the top of that midfield three. It'll be interesting to watch Cifuentes, and we'll go on to talk about him a bit later on when we start to look at lineups and stuff like that. But when Cifuentes gets up and fully running and used to the team, I think it'll be really interesting to see a dynamic midfielder like him and how that impacts what Cantwell is able to do, what Lammers is able to do, and all of that sort of stuff as well. So it's not something we've had for quite a while actually. So it's something I'm excited to see. The other part of that, I guess, that question that you asked, Reiss, that kicked us off was Dessers. Tommy says Dessers probably about 4 to 5 weeks behind in conditioning. Scott Stephen 19 saying Dessers will come good. He had 2 off the line on Saturday. He's getting in the right positions. Remember, he's still 2, maybe 3 weeks behind the group. He was injured as well at the back end of the season. I do like Dessers' movement, Reiss. Just whenever he gets a chance to shoot, or whenever he seems to get in the right position, I'm not convinced he's going to make connection with the ball more than anything else. I think when he scored in the first leg against Servette, it was probably lucky that the ball hit off him and went in, rather than him making an actual effort to play the ball. Now, that might be harsh. That might be extremely harsh. But it's starting to get that kind of impression from him. I don't know if you've started to get the same.
I think it's just, for me, what I think we're missing is how many players have we seen in Scotland succeed purely because of their physical capabilities. Like, look at Fashion Sakala. Like, there was times where you weren't convinced he knew what he was doing, but he was quick enough to get there. There's guys like Kendal says and other teams in the city who I think are in that team purely because they run and run and run. I don't know that they're technically excellent, but I think anytime I've seen like Lammers or Dessers for that matter, they've just failed to produce a lot of force. Like, anytime they've hit a shot, it's just, for want of a better word, it's been a bit powder puff, where you're like, there's no much force behind that. Keepers know how to do much. There's no much physical strength or pace from either of them. And I think you can be all well and good technical if you want, but if somebody's quick enough to get round either side of you and put a tackle in before you've moved it or before you've got by them, it's I struggle to see how it happens, but I do think he meant it, to be honest with you, Craig, in his first one. But I don't know, I just don't like how narrow the formation is. I can't get behind 2 central strikers, and going by what we've seen, albeit as early as it is, I think Danilo's a better one to be leading the line if it was up to me.
It'll be real interesting, and we obviously saw how Michael Beale wanted to, or how he started to set up his side towards the end of last season. We went on a huge unbeaten run. We went on a huge winning run, actually, to be fair, outside of the Celtic games, and that's the areas where he needs to improve. Going into the start of this season, there was a lot of factors that came into the Kilmarnock game. The more you look back at that, the more you realise just how many different things all went wrong at the same time. Whereas last Wednesday against Servette, it seemed to come together. On Saturday, it seemed to come together. And Kendal, we're heading into the second leg against Servette in Geneva, sold out stadium. First time Servette have sold out a game in, I believe, 15 plus years. So their fans are definitely up for it. 2-1 ahead. I think looking back on last week's first leg, my only disappointment is that we're not further ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I do want to move on from very quickly is this myth of Servette's whole home form. They've not been beaten for X amount of stuff. They've not won at home this season, right? Let's put that right at the start here. They have not won at home this season. They've had 3 draws. And we're not talking against salubrious opposition here. I think I took a note of some of the stats, and against St Gallen at the weekend there, it was a 1-1 draw at home, and they had 40% of possession, Servette did, and St Gallen had 24 shots against them. Now that's not screaming out a team that I am going to go into tomorrow night with any sense of fear over. And I thought the press conference from Michael Beale was the first line out of that press conference is, right, we're going to go at them. Now, I do also think that looking at how they've played this season, they've almost entirely, bar one game, I think, played on the counter-attack. So they've given up possession. So they will be going on the counter-attack. And I do think that they're dangerous in the sense that although the XG against us in the first leg, it was less than 1, it was like 0.8 or something like that. They had expected goals, but they had 7 shots on target. So they didn't like not create stuff. They just weren't very good at like that final little ball, etc. So there's a danger there, but there's nothing to be fearful of there. And I think if we do our job properly, pick the right team, get at them, pace, power, that's much more the second half what I want to see tomorrow in the lineup. And there's nothing to fear. That's what I would say. That's what I'm taking from it. There's nothing to fear there.
Yeah, I'd agree that there's nothing to fear. I think it's a really interesting one tomorrow night because Servette had so many players missing last week. I think it was 7 in total for a wide variety of reasons, from injury to suspension to visa issues. There was 7 players missing last week for Servette. It's expected 4 or 5 will come back into the team next week. That makes it a bit more difficult to really understand what challenge is going to face us. It's interesting what Kendal says there about they like to sit back and try and play in the counter-attack. That's definitely what we saw in the first leg against Rangers. It was difficult to understand if that was because it was at Ibrox, because it was away from home, because Rangers started with such high pace and such high amounts of movement in that final third as well, that they were almost penned back, but they never really came out of that, especially, and then they went down to 10 men, which also has a similar effect, and they try and camp in and manage to prevent us from scoring again. So interesting to understand what you learnt from both teams in that first leg. So what did you learn from Rangers? Kendall's touched on that a wee bit, but also what did you learn from Servette?
Much the same as the weekend. I thought it was very narrow, which probably suits us with the ball in terms of creating and getting quick passes in between. But I thought Servette were quite resolute. They weren't like just there for the taking. At first, when we went 2-0 up, you were thinking this could be a lot more comfortable than what it had been made out to be, and inevitably I think it will be, famous last words. But just as Kendal was saying, I think they do allow quite a lot of chances against them. For whatever reason, it is very, very, not easy, but frequent that you will get good chances against them. I was looking at the Servette St Gallen game at the weekend. Out of the 24 shots, how many do you think? Just take a guess. What inside the box out of 24?
Because you're asking that question, I'm going to go for 3.
Many do you
think? I'll go
6.
I'll go 6.
20.
Oh, wow.
20 shots.
Went the other way. Wow.
St Gallen had 20 shots from inside their box on goal.
Finished winning, so did they not?
It did. They had 7 shots on target out of that 20, to be fair, and 14 off out of the 24. So, you can imagine how many big chances they give away. That might be as a result of being more attacking and more expansive away from home. But you could definitely sense in the stadium in the first leg, like, we were going down at half time and those guys going, but this is their B team and all that. Like, I don't think it was their B team as such, but they were missing quite a few. So obviously that is the worry, but I've got enough kind of faith in our analysis and coaching department that one will be prepared for who they do have that didn't come to Ibrox, how they perform with them, and what we can expect when we go over there.
Yeah, there's plenty of confidence in the comments as well. And Kendal, I'm keen to get your thoughts on this. Paul McGarrigle says, we can't go gung-ho tomorrow. Pick our moments to go for them and take our chances. Offer a Hill says, we're the better team and with a lead. Also, they were further ahead in their season. I'm confident. Curry Muncher says, I said last week Servette are Kelly on steroids. If we're clinical, we will shut the game out before they get a chance to come at us. How, just picking up on that last point, I guess, before touching on the others, how confident are you that one goal for us will kill the tie? Is that something you feel, or do you feel we need more than one tomorrow night?
I think we'll probably need more than one to be sure for a comfortable night where we're not all like sitting on it, like biting our fingernails down to the quick. I think we're going to need more than one. I mean, again, if you're looking at this season, their best players, their best play is their front men. Continually, you look at their stats, you look at the scores, etc. that are coming up. Their front men, every game, is where their strength is. It's whether their midfield, which tends to be their weak point, can get the ball with them. So I think it was Paul there that said, to not go on gung ho and control that midfield. I absolutely believe that, and it wouldn't surprise me. I wouldn't go with this. It's not what I've got as my team, but I think he probably will go with Jack, Raskin, and Cifuentes in that middle. I think that'll be your middle three tomorrow, and then Cantwell, who can drop back from the front line as well to support that. Really control that midfield, and then we can go on from there. And I think that kind of leaves them, which they are quite good at as well, is going long. So because the strikers are good at holding it up and they can attack from there, although they don't score a lot of goals, again, which breeds my confidence. But it's not out of the realms of possibility that we are going to need 2 goals to go through tomorrow night, I think. Especially with the left side of your defence.
We'll come on to talk about that left side of the defence later on in the podcast. But Reiss, I'm going to go through Michael Beale's comments. We started to touch on bits and pieces of them anyway as we started to make our way through the podcast. I'm just going to go through some of them, and then I've got some questions that I'll start bringing towards you. But keen first of all to get your reaction overall to what he says. He says it's a huge game. We know Servette had a great game here in the last round against Genk. We know it's a full house. We'll have a great atmosphere, and we're looking forward to it. We know the home team have to win the game, so there will be opportunities if we can win the ball and attack at speed. I think very much like we touched on in terms of what the second half was like in the first leg. I expect an open game. We are ready for anything that comes our way tomorrow evening. We have had a lot of big nights in Europe away from home, but we also know that every game in Europe is difficult away from home. We have to be at our best tomorrow evening. It's important we try to win again tomorrow. We want to be positive. We are not coming here to hold on to what we have. We know it's an important game for the club, the fans, and for us as staff. Goldson is back, and Ryan Jack is also back. I want to touch on, first of all, we've obviously already spoken a bit about we should be a bit more aggressive in terms of controlling the game, and in terms of, especially on the counter-attack as well, where we feel there's going to be space. How important is that mentality? And we hear it time and time again, but we quite often see the opposite as well. When you go into a second leg of a 2-legged tie and you're 1 goal ahead and you're away from home, and managers always say, we're going to go try win it. We're going to go try our very best to win it. It's not always the case that we see. Do do you fully expect us to have that attitude, I guess, and take the game to Servette and try and secure the win early on?
See, I don't think we will. And I think there's maybe a reason for it that's not as stated. So, as we've seen with Livingston at the weekend, and it's quite weird to think Livingston might have been a dress rehearsal for Servette. So in the first half, when it was 1-0, it could, in theory, be the way that Servette approached this game for the first half. They're still in the tie. They only need one goal to level it. Livingston only needed one goal on a counter to level it. But as soon as Rangers went 2-0 up, Livingston came out the traps and we ended up winning 4-0 because we play better when teams open up and we've got more space to play into. So I wouldn't be surprised if for the first half we are a bit more reserved and a bit more focused on, right, let you have the ball, we'll defend as we've done in Europe before, and then second half when Servette are even more desperate to the point where they're going, say it's nothing each at half time, 2-1 in aggregate still, they start throwing men forward, gung-ho. Rangers then go, right, we've got that space in behind, bang, there's a goal, tie over, sort of thing. But I do think one goal over there probably does kill it, if it's the first goal. If it's not the first goal, who knows, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see it be a bit more defensive first half, and then possibly like the Livingston game at the weekend, a few changes, maybe half time, 60th minute, and kill it off then.
Yeah, Kendal, one of the things Michael Beale spoke about, and it's one of those intangibles, I guess, in terms of the atmosphere at the game. We know it's going to be a full house. We know because it's the first time it's been a full house in however long. We know because of the stage of the Champions League qualification that we're at, that the fans in Geneva are definitely going to be up for it. So as a Rangers fan, you expect your team to be able to cope with atmospheres and to cope in big occasions. We see it time and time again. Given how many of our players are new to the team, how many of our players haven't necessarily played for the biggest clubs in countries previously, is there any chance the atmosphere could be an influencing factor?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't see. I mean, you're talking about it's a 30,000 sellout. I'm sure they'll have the great, a great atmosphere there. But if they don't normally sell out games, and I don't think you might have a roar, but you're not going to have 30,000 people chanting the same songs. If you look at the players that have come in, for instance, say we've got a Lammers. Lammers has played in Italy. He's going to have played against Roma and stuff like that. You got Napoli, they're going to have experience of that. Dessers, if he plays, he's been right through at a Conference League final. He's going to have faced some real high pressure kind of games and all that kind of stuff. The one thing we've brought in is we've brought in experience as well as, there's no. There's no Matondos, with all due respect to Matondo, there's no sort of young laddies that's trying to make their way in the game. The guys we've brought in have come in with reputation. You look at Cantwell's first Old Firm game. Now, he put his chest out and he's stealing water bottles away from players and all this kind of stuff. We're noising them right up and that kind of thing. I mean, we'll find out a lot about the players tomorrow. If it is that kind of atmosphere, which again, just because it's 30,000 people doesn't mean it's going to be that kind of atmosphere. It's not going to be an Old Firm to me. And if it's not that, then actually we've got players there that have been through it, done it. You look at the last two Old Firms. Yes, I know what you're saying about the team, but it's not an entirely new team, and the ones that will be playing have got experience in those cauldrons. So not for me. It's not an excuse for me. Now it might sort of take 10 minutes to get used to, but it's not an excuse.
Yeah, I have to agree. To be honest, it's kind of one of those red herring things that people throw out, and sometimes people throw out about Ibrox as well in terms of how the atmosphere is going to be really intimidating. It's very rarely that you see an away team, no matter what size they are, come to Ibrox and be truly intimidated by the atmosphere. I think weirdly the last team that I saw and I thought, actually, you look a bit scared, was Red Star Belgrade of all teams. When you think about the atmosphere they have, and they're just the way their players seemed a bit shell shocked, and it wasn't something I expected, nor was it something that I really saw again in that European run. But that first sort of 20 minutes against them at Ibrox was surprising, to say the least. You want to jump in?
Nah, I think Dortmund will. I don't know if it was just being caught up in it that I kind of was taken away with it as well, but I think Dortmund and Leipzig definitely were. But as Kendall said, and just as he was going through it there, I'm thinking, nah, that atmosphere's not going to be anything. I think Beale's just thrown it in as kind of a line for the press conference where he's not looking patronising, probably, because let's be honest, Servette aren't even the biggest team in Switzerland. There's Basel, Young Boys, St Gallen, probably FC Zurich, Grasshoppers, everybody you could name before you come to Servette. We should be battering them, and we arguably could have in the first leg. Could have been 4-1, 5-1.
I don't doubt that, and I think a lot of it. Michael Beale spoke as well about an open game, and he spoke about the fact that it'll be like much like the second half we saw at Ibrox, and in that second half there was space for us, but time and time again it was just the choices the players were making at important points as they ran through. We saw players trying to do too much. For quite a few players, it was their debut on the park, and they were trying to do too much with the ball. They were trying to take on a man too extra, or they were trying to play a World Cup ball instead of just playing it inside. How important is it that we get those choices right tomorrow night, Reiss?
I think it is important. I think we will create enough to hopefully see the game out. If I was to predict it, I don't see many problems for us in that regard, but I think, again, that's something that will come with familiarity over time. I think the more the players get to know each other, it's a bit like if you played with Morelos at first, you wouldn't know just how much he liked his back to goal and stuff. And I'm sure at first there probably was a few balls in behind that he's just turned around and looked at somebody and went, no chance. So there will be a bit of that getting used to with the players, and the likes of Lammers and Dessers could totally prove us all wrong and start to get to know the people around about them, play each other's strengths, and that decision making does come off. So hopefully we see that tomorrow, but if not, I think we'll definitely see it as time progresses.
Yeah, Kendall, I think one of the most important parts of the press conference for me was just the confirmation that Connor Goldson was coming back into the starting lineup in that defence. We knew, or we were 99% certain that he was rested at the weekend, and it wasn't anything to do with an injury or any worry or anything like that. So it's nice to have that peace of mind that he's coming back in. But how important can both Connor Goldson and Ryan Jack be in games like this?
Well, Connor Goldson is, I mean, in a funny kind of way, because the league was really gone pretty much by the time he got injured. It was almost a good thing for me, because it showed how important he was to us. And if anybody, I don't know what to tell you. If there's anybody sitting listening that thinks Goldson still shouldn't be in the team, I don't know what to tell you. You're wrong. He's the first name in the team sheet every week you won. Him plus one would go through a lot of the games and picked us up a lot of the points that we lost when it was Sands and King. It's as simple as that. And Ryan Jack's a different one. I think Ryan Jack does a great job for us. I think he's really good. I think he's a pale imitation of Cifuentes. And depending on the thing, I mean, I know he's like Beale saying, he's going to be running about tomorrow night. It wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't play. I think he'll do a great job for us if he does play. But depending how much Beale wants to go after them, I'd be tempted to have a Dowell in there with Cifuentes and Raskin. And Raskin sitting and Cifuentes just next to him and doing the box-to-box stuff, and do a little bit more. He's got a lot of energy anyway. And yeah, I would be tempted to put him in there. I think we will see Jack. So I'll take that back. I think we will see Jack. I think he will get it. But long-term is one of these weird things. If Dowell was called Dowlinho with the start he's made at Rangers, with the goal he's made, the energy he shows, the pre-season he had, he'd be the first name in the sheet. He came for nothing from Norwich, and he wasn't known like Todd Cantwell was, and I think he suffers from that. But Jack's a cracking player. I'm delighted he stayed. I would have him for another couple of year contract as well, and he can step in and he'll never let anybody down. but he's not a game changer like Cifuentes is, like Raskin is, and potentially like Dowell is. And that's just my opinion on it.
I think Ryan Jackson is an interesting one because heading into this season, I thought he was going to be a squad player. I thought he'd play the occasional game. I think he's well suited to games such as European away ties, such as going to play at Tynecastle or going to play at Easter Road or going to play at Celtic Park. But going places or playing at home at Ibrox, for example, I don't necessarily think is the type of game that he will tend to be suited to. He's probably, tomorrow night would be one of those games that I would bring him in. I think John Lundstrom, I know he's not travelled because of personal reasons tomorrow, but I think John Lundstrom is slowly getting further and further out of the starting 11 picture, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. But Reiss, for you, where does Ryan Jack fit in games like against Servette in the second leg tomorrow night? How can his qualities benefit us?
So I think it depends kind of what game plan we go with, whether it is the sit-off approach or whether we are front foot. I think if we're front-footed, then he should be in the 11 tomorrow. And as Ian's put in the comments, I would have Cantwell in that 10 role. And I think at that point, you've got to have Ryan Jack in the 3 behind, especially if Lundstrom's out for personal reasons. So it depends what we go with, but I think with the lineup tomorrow, we can expect to start strong and probably finish strong. I think tomorrow's probably going to be a good indication of what our best 11 looks like in Beale's eyes so far, because like with Morton at the weekend, with all due respect, he can max out tomorrow. We can go all out and then know fine well that we don't have the hardest of challenges we're going to face this season at the weekend. So I think Ryan Jack, I would have expected him to take Arfield's minutes this season coming. He seems to be playing a wee bit more than that, and it's maybe a bit of an indication that Lundstrom seems to be playing as often as Arfield now.
Yeah, Kendal, both Reiss and myself, I guess, expected Ryan Jack to play a little bit less. You went there completely the other way and said you'd offer him another 2 or 3 year contract. Are you? Were you? I guess you're not as surprised as we are by how much he's been involved so far. Bearing in mind we are only 3 competitive games into the season.
I mean, I think every time, like Jack suffered the same thing as quite a few of our players. Which actually, you look at Hadji before Hadji got injured. There was no doubts about Hadji and Hadji's quality. I think the doubts on Hadji was about whether he could come back from being injured for so long. But you look at Roof when Roof's fit. Roof's probably one of the best strikers, but you wouldn't be going out and buying a Dessers if you knew Roof was going to be fit. You just wouldn't, because he's a cracking striker. And Ryan Jack is a cracking midfielder. And that's just it. If Ryan Jack's fit, up until, as I say, I think the midfield now, with Cifuentes, Raskin, Cantwell, Dowell, potentially the strongest Rangers midfield that we've seen for many a year. And that will only get proved over time. So we'll see. So I think that's where, he might struggle for minutes going forward. But up until, Cifuentes came in, Ryan Jack fit starts every game he can play.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see Reiss laughing, and I assume it's at Robert Tringham's. Reiss really interests me, as every opinion I've heard from Rangers does, but he looks 15. They are saying he looks 15, probably is about 4 or 5 years older than I think he looks. So
play to your strengths.
Exactly. But yeah, Reiss, I think Ryan Jack is an interesting one. Pete Lawrence says Ryan Jack on his game is a great asset to the team, ball retention, passing and defensive cover he offers. My issue with Ryan Jack is often that he slows the game down too much for us. I think when it's a massive issue I've got with John Lundstrom as well, to be fair, but when they do get the ball off, whether it be the goalkeeper or the centre halves, they turn and then they look and they look and they look and they look, and they could have passed it about 4 times in that period, and then they pass it sideways, and any attempt we have at breaking down a team or catching a team out of position or breaking at pace just disappears, and it happens time after time in games. So that's why I think he's better suited to games like tomorrow night, where we're away from home and we're looking to control the tempo of the game, or looking to control possession and take it from there. So it'll be really interesting with Ryan Jack on that one. One thing that Ryan Jack was asked about in his part of the press conference, he gave a lot of very generic, very boring answers in his press conference. I won't even read them out. But one thing he was asked about, which I hadn't really considered, Reiss, was the heat in Geneva. It's been during the day, it's been between 32 and 35 degrees over there. I checked just before we came on the podcast tonight. We obviously started recording at 9 p.m. UK time. It's a bit beyond where the final whistle will be, or just before where the final whistle will be tomorrow night in Geneva. But it was 27 degrees in the city. How big? Ryan Jack says we train in pre-season in hot climates for this kind of thing, so we're not worried about it. How big an impact can that actually have?
Yeah, I don't really know how much of an impact it will have on the team. I think we have played in warm weather before. It's not like that's not happened, but interestingly, we always seem to be worse when we come back from Dubai in those winter trips. So I don't know. I hope no, but I think we'll be used to it. In worst case scenario, you've got 5 subs to make. You know, I don't think we're against a massive opposition, and in that regard, a lot of our players now have come from abroad anyway, so they'll be used to playing in these climates. Like you look at Cifuentes, I'm pretty sure Ecuador's pretty wanting to play football in, and he done it well enough. But on Jack as well, as you were saying, I think that's where the upgrade is. We're asking, like, he'll just do it in 2 touches rather than 4. But I don't think in normal circumstances you need the likes of Jack and Raskin in the same team. But for tomorrow night, I can see why you would have 2 when you're probably not going to be the ball dominant team.
Yeah, Kendal, that's actually, Reiss makes a point there in terms of he doesn't feel like Raskin and Jack work particularly well in a midfield, and I think in some occasions, such as Livingston at home, that's probably the case. But we did see it last week in the first leg against Servette, and it for the first 20 minutes, the first 20, 30 minutes, it worked an absolute treat. Do you think that's something we will see more of? Michael Beale does seem to like the fact that Raskin can push a bit forward, but also sit a bit deeper as well if he needs to, and he has that flexibility in terms of his positioning. And if he does want the sort of 2 defensive mids or the double pivot, as some people like to call it, from if they're the Football Manager, it does seem to like that flexibility in there. Do you think something we'll see more than we probably think?
I think Beale is looking to. I think he's built the squad to play very much horses for courses. I think he's intending to very much change the game plan as to the opposition. So I think you will see it. But then I think the reason that Lundstram gets the minutes he does is because he likes him to drop in and become the back 3. So there's going to be games where he's going to play Lundstram, where we're going to be scratching our heads, and you're going to see that he's going to be dropping in a lot, creating that back 3 and really push up the guys on the side. So I think he's very much going for a horses for courses, and that's obviously what he's seen from Servette before the game last week. I think that he wants to keep that solidity in the midfield and then push the rest of them up. I think that's where Sima. I've got him as a certain starter for tomorrow, because that kind of pace, power, and to pin there. I think the secret to tomorrow night is to going to isolate their strikers from the midfield, because their midfield is not great. I know they've got a couple of players coming back and one out, but their midfield is probably the weakest part of that. So if you can isolate the front from the backmen, the front and the backmen, if you can pin their defence back, then I think that they're going to have to resort to long balls. So it wouldn't surprise me to see that strong, real, dominant midfield in there. So that's where Jack possibly gets in. I personally wouldn't, because I'd really want to have a go at them tomorrow. So I'd have, Dowell in there with the others too. But I can see he's probably going to do that, and I understand the thinking why. But the important thing is get those defenders, get their wing backs pinned back, and then I think we'll have quite a reasonably comfortable night. I don't think we'll have less of the ball. I think we'll have more ball tomorrow than they have.
Yeah, Reiss appears to have left us for a couple of seconds. He going by the earlier comment about how old he is. He might well be away to ask his mum if he can stay up to 10 o'clock. But who knows? Who knows? Kendal's slowly giving away his team one by one as we go through this podcast. I don't know if anyone's keeping track of what it is. We will come to predicted starting lineups shortly, and I know we did touch on some of the new players. Probably more on the ones who aren't impressing us at the start of the podcast, but I'm keen to look at the ones who are impressing so far. Reiss, which of the new signings have you most been impressed by?
Of the new players, probably Jack Butland, in all honesty. I think Butland's mentality, his mindset, his experience, you see all come into play. I think at times, I've probably questioned his distribution more than most, but I think he's always looked dead assured. You seen like that deflected shot on Saturday where he's not needed for 90 minutes, but the 1 minute he is needed, he's there and he will make that decision. And he seems quite calm as well. I think that's something that comes with age, especially being a goalkeeper. He's not somebody that's not been in certain environments before. He's played in front of 80,000 or whatever. So I think he's been really reassured or reassuring for the back four as well. But other than him, I would say Cifuentes impressed me in the limited amount we've seen of him. And Danilo, I think, has a lot of potential, but I think he's just been trying too hard. He's shooting for everywhere. Like, you can tell he's really trying. He's trying to impress and win the hearts of us, which, again, sounds good to me.
Yeah, Kendal, Butland isn't actually one that seems to get mentioned all too often. We tend to focus more on the forward line or the forward-thinking players than we do the goalkeeper. But I do have a lot more confidence this season in our goalkeeper than I have done for the past 2 seasons. And I guess I was very vocal on this podcast about the fact that Alan McGregor should have retired 2 seasons ago. But I do feel much more confident in Jack Butland and his all-round ability. Even was it I think it was one of the pre-season games. He came absolutely flying out his box and put in a sliding tackle to clear a ball. He timed it absolutely perfectly, and it was just so different and so refreshing to see.
Yeah, I mean, to put it quite bluntly, at 1-0 at the weekend last season, we lost at least 1 goal to those 2 shots he saved. At least 1, maybe 2. We were maybe 2-1 down at that point, crowd on our backs and really going for it. I do a thing where through a season I kind of work out how many points keepers actually earn you. And I would actually have him known as winning us a couple of points, because without those saves, and one was going right in the corner after a deflection, and right in the corner, and he kept it out. I think he's a cracking keeper, and I also think that Griggsy has left part of his soul actually there, because I don't know if you saw him pick up that soul and like scream at Tav for one of the misplaced passes, which I thought was brilliant. You're just in the door and you're having a right dig at the captain. I thought, brilliant. That's exactly what you need your keeper to be doing, and keeping them honest. I think with him and Goldson, etc., who because Goldson's a talker as well. I think that actually there's a real good makings of a back four there. And just if I can just mention as well, you were talking about the new players, etc. I think you were absolutely bang on with everybody you mentioned, especially with Butland. But I do think we're talking about people that we forget about, and I do think Dowell and Dowlinho, as I'm now going to call him, is he has been the best performing new signing we've had. He's not had a bad game, I don't think, even in that abortion of a game against Killie. If there was one player that actually played well, it was him.
Yeah, I think there's a couple that jury's still out for me, but we are 3 games into a season, so it's harsh to judge. I've done that before with John Lundstrom, and then he scored a goal to get us to the Europa League final that same season. So I will hold off on the judgments on that one. But I think the two, I think Dessers and I think Seema are the two that are kind of a bit jury's out for me at the moment. I know Seema's got his goal at the weekend, and he's really quick. I just think his overall play hasn't quite convinced me yet, and I remain open to being convinced, but I'm not there yet. Do you agree, Reiss?
Yeah, definitely. I think as good as it was, and I hope it does spur them on. Like Dessler's getting the goal last week, and then Seema at the weekend. I think both goals were easier to miss, but hopefully it just like settles them down. Danilo's scored now as well, so hopefully he stops shooting for 40 yards in his first touch. But I think that we should be taking probably, to paraphrase John Bennett, a more long-term view when we judge players. But we all know as Rangers fans that's not happening. But
just on that though, Reiss, I know you mentioned how many of the new players have scored, and I think that's a really important. It's always a really important point, whether it's just in my head or whether it's actually a trend. I'm not entirely sure, but see when you get new players, especially strikers or forwards, who they might take 6 or 7 games to get off the mark. That is not what I look for, and I've almost written them off by that stage. It's been really good to see so many of the different players and so many different new players finding the back of the net. And I think because we have been so reliant on Alfredo Morelos and James Tavernier for however many seasons now, we're talking 4 seasons, maybe 5 seasons now, we've almost been solely reliant on them. To see the range of contributions in terms of goal scoring is great so far, even in the first 3 games.
Yeah, I think so. And just when you spoke about new players building that almost like knack of scoring early and not going a long time without scoring, I think we've seen that across the city, that can actually put fear into people. Like last year, they outperformed their expected goals by, I think it was like 8 goals. It was either 8 to 10. But that, when you think about that, then so they're scoring goals that normal strikers wouldn't score for that chance, that exact chance. So either they're exceptional finishers, which might be true, I don't believe it to be true, or teams are just expecting they'll score because they've done it before and they do it quite regularly. And if everybody's got that mindset, then they will do it quite regularly. So if you've got the likes of Danilo and Dessler's coming into the league, the likes of Levy, like they've scored into those sort of teams, so they'll expect, well, they're a good finisher, so they're probably going to score the same way Kyogo might. And then it just takes that 1% in a goalkeeper's head to think, as he's hitting this shot, it's probably going to end up in. And it could be a difference just here and there.
Yeah, I think it's so important we get so many more contributions goal-wise from across the squad, and it's made a really positive start, and hopefully that continues. Gavin Dowds clearly didn't like the joke about you asking your mom if you could stay awake, and he says he's unsubbed. To everyone out there, if you've not subscribed to the podcast, please do. We're about 10 subscriptions away from hitting the magical 6,000 subscriber mark. So please drop a like on the video and subscribe to the TII podcast. You get to hear our voices most weeks, and there's a whole range of content coming at you, whether it's live podcasts, whether it's podcasts about the women's team, the B team, or live from Ibrox on match days. There's plenty of content coming all round, and make sure you're subscribed so you get a notification every single time. And he's come back and said he lied, so good on him. Maybe we only need 9 now, but just subscribe anyway, just in case. We're kind of encroaching the hour now. Kendal, I'm going to start with yourself because you've revealed about 3/4 of your team anyway. So can you give us your sort of predicted starting lineup for the second leg?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of the back line kind of speaks for itself just now. So you've got Butland obviously in goals with Connor and Souter in the middle, Tav and Borna on the wings. I know that'll get me my starter for 10 for abuse. I don't think Sterling has had enough minutes yet, or I would put him in there. I do think long term we'll see Sterling over there, but in this one, Borna's still going to the left.
Kendal, I'm going to interrupt you just there because the Borna Barisic one does kind of interest me. Is he just there at this moment in time because he's the only option? Do you think? Do you think Michael Beale actually likes him and will be starting left back going forward? Where's the balance in there in terms of where the truth lies?
I think it's again a bit of both. I don't think there's a straightforward answer to it. I think Michael Beale likes him. I think he brings something to that team. If you're pushing your foot right, he's a liability going back. I think we all know that. And then he gets it in. If you give him the ball in his own half, he'll go forward 10 yards, he'll stop, he'll come back and he'll look for a pass, he'll pass it in, pass it to the goalkeeper, give the corner away. But the other side of that is if you're pushing those right up, so he's talked a few times in pressers about back three. If he goes back three and you get Tav and Borna right up that pitch, and then you've got, Cifuentes and Raskin minding the sides or being those extra men filling in behind, then Borna puts in a hell of a cross. And he gets assists, and we've got a lot of man mountains in the team now. Yes, okay, our front men like Danilo and Dessers aren't huge, but the rest were. Lammers 6'3", 6'4", Seema's 6'2", 6'3". The defenders when they come in and they break and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of big laddies in that team, and those crosses can really make it. So I can see him getting a lot of game time. I do think if you're playing, for instance, in an Old Firm game, it wouldn't surprise me to see Sterling there, where I actually know I need somebody that's going to watch the back here. So I really wouldn't surprise me to see him, Morton, get a full game there, to see what he's like. So we'll kind of have a right good look at him and see is he ready for the Old Firm game. So again, I think it's going to be horses for courses. Borna's not going anywhere this season. He's just not. He's not going to get sold, and I think he will infuriate us and he'll delight us. And people that hate him will continue to hate him, and people that love him will continue to love him. And it's just Borna.
Fair. That's can't wait to watch Borna Barisic at left back for the rest of the season then.
Yeah, absolutely. The rest of the team, so the midfield, I think he's going to go with Cifuentes, Raskin and Jack. I would prefer Dowell in there instead of Jack. And front three for me, I've got Seema. I think Seema will play because he hurts them with the pace, and again push that full back, push the defence back. I think that's vital to tomorrow. So I think you'll see Seema just for his presence, and I would have Cantwell and Danilo. So that would be my front three: Cantwell, Seema, and Danilo tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Everyone seems to have slight variations on their starting lineups. I have a couple in the comments here. So Paul McGarrigle was Butland, Tav, Goldson, Suter, Borna, Jack, Raskin, Cifuentes, Cantwell, Seema, Danilo. Whereas the Trying Scotsman went for Butland, Borna, Goldson, Suter, Tav, Raskin, Jack, Cifuentes, Cantwell, Danilo, and Lammers. Reiss, it seems to be that front three that's changing people's minds, and I guess people are agreeing with some of the views earlier in the podcast that said Cantwell should be pushed up into that front three. What does your starting lineup look like?
So I think if I was to predict it and bet on it, which I don't think is possible, but if it was a wager from my pal, I'll go Butland, Barisic, Suter, Goldson, Tav, midfield three, Jack, Raskin, Cifuentes. Don't think that will surprise many. In fact, no, let me retract that. I think he'll go Raskin, Jack, Cantwell. I think we will see Lammers, but I think it'll be Danilo and Seema up front just to get us a bit of pace up front to lead a press. I think he'll go Seema. And then in the second half, it probably wouldn't surprise me to see us do exactly what we've done against Livingston and go with two wide men in behind one central striker, say it's Danilo.
Yeah, I think your slight change to your team there meant it was in complete agreement with what I saw, what I was thinking in terms of along the lines. I don't think Cantwell will be moved forward tomorrow night. I think we saw the midfield last week in the first leg was so dominant in that first 20 minutes that we'll go for the exact same on that front again. I think Seema will start. We'll be looking for pace where possible, and Lammer's trickery allows us to try and break them down if they do sit back, like we potentially suspect they will do. And then I think that's probably how we're going to set up tomorrow night in terms of substitutions. Kieran Dowell, or Dowinho, as he's now been christened by Kendal. Well, I'm not convinced by that, by the way. I'm just not convinced. You can keep plugging it, Kendal, but I'm not convinced. I think
the fourth screamer he scores, you'll start calling him after the fourth screamer he scores.
Fair enough. I think he'll come on and play a big part tomorrow night in the second half, but I don't think he's quite going to start. So we're pretty close, I think, in our 3 starting 11s there. Just myself and Reiss in complete agreement, and then just the one discrepancy there, I think, Kendal, and I'm going to keep calling it a discrepancy rather than an option. On the Gavin Dowd's petitioning the council for a statue of me. I mean, I'm sure there's much better things the council could spend their money on, but if it's going, I'll take it. Just to close off the podcast as we do hit the hour mark, Kendal, come to you first for your score prediction.
Yeah, I'm going 3-1. 3-1 Rangers.
Very confident. And Reiss, how about you?
I'll go 2-0 Rangers. 2-0.
Excellent. And I'm going to go even more confident. I'm going to go 3-0 Rangers. Really comfortable win, and strolling into the next round against likely PSV. I think they're 4-1 up from their first leg against Servette. So it's going to be PSV again. Hopefully a few sales over the next week or so for PSV, especially Sangari, if he's making his way back to Ibrox. If he was sold, that would definitely be helpful. But I think we'll round it off there. Thank you very much, everyone, for commenting. Plenty of engagement there in the chat. If you've enjoyed tonight's podcast, please remember to like the video. Please remember to subscribe to the TII YouTube channel. As I said, we're about 9 or 10 subscribers away from the magical number of 6,000 subscribers. Thank you very much to everyone who has already subscribed. They'll tell you how great it is to get a notification every single time we go live or we upload a video. All that's left for me to do tonight is to thank our contributors. Thank you very much, Kendal.
You're welcome.
And Reiss, thank you very much again.
Always a pleasure, mate. Cheers.
Thank your mum for letting you stay up as well.
I know, that's me. Lights it.
Thank you very much to you all for listening. We'll be back. Kyle will be back on Wednesday night to review the game tomorrow night against Servette and start to look ahead towards Morton with the warm up. So we'll be back on Wednesday night. Plenty of content coming again this week as always. Until next time, goodbye.